I had the rights for South Australia, and a company in Sydney, which really was Athletes for Australia Proprietary Limited, had the rights for every other state. There were two partners at that stage, and Dave Cooper became the third partner.
We went over and had a look at the store in Adelaide. We indicated to Mike that we were starting up from Sydney and that we'd taken on the rest of Australia outside South Australia. I fell in love with the concept, and Helen and I mortgaged our home and put in, I think it was $30,000, and we went to the bank and borrowed $500,000. It was quite an adventure.
Dave hired me as a consultant to come to Sydney and basically help set up shop.
The 20th of November 1980, we opened our first store. The first one in Miranda and the second one in Bondi. The first 5 years was tough. I hadn't had any retail experience, so if I was going to persuade an applicant to become a franchisee, then I had to have something to show them. So we opened, I think, 4 stores before we opened our first franchise store.
My involvement with TAF goes back to probably in the 70s when my great friend Mike Freed and we used to play tennis together quite a bit. In 1982, I went into partnership with Mike at Marion.
You know, all the people that had sports stores in town said, "You'll go broke, it'll be a matter of time." But it really never entered my head. At that stage, Adidas was 50% of the total market, and we had to order every shoe in the Adidas range and every shoe in the Puma range to have a display. So we had high jump shoes, long jump shoes, we had triple jump shoes, we had boxing shoes, we had every shoe you could think of, just to really make it look like this is a store that's got the biggest range of shoes, you know, in the world.
I opened my first store at Penrith in 1985. I wrote little budgets out, sales budgets and expenses budgets, and it's all written there, and I've never been able to throw that book away. And at times it wasn't all that pretty, actually. I think my net profit estimate there was $2,400. At times I looked at it and thought, I don't know whether I should get into this.
Without Dave Cooper, it may not have I don't think this business would be the thriving business it is today, because there was a time when there really was a crucial point.
Around about 1985, we were almost to the point of having to pull the shutters down, and we'd lost a substantial amount of money. We'd agreed that we'd give it another 6 months. So I went over to the US to an Athlete's Foot conference, and they had a guy called Richard Outcall. But he just developed an information desk. He actually blew me away in his presentation, and I couldn't wait to actually load all our data onto it. What it very clearly said was that although our footwear was performing reasonably well, we had far too much clothing stock. So I made a rash decision based on the fact that we were only going to give it another 6 months.
In the first year, I sold 107 pair of shorts in a day, and I thought, oh, you know, I've got it made here. The fact is that when we did go all footwear, the sales of footwear increased to a greater extent than the loss through the clothing. But I took a bit, I admit I took a bit of convincing.
And it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. We had immediate sales increases of around about 30% across the board.
Dave, to his credit, he made a speech. The thrust of it was that we're going to achieve a 45% gross margin, and when we do that, we'll have a business.
Well, I'm sure I was there at that meeting, and 45% was, I mean, out of this world. I mean, and then as we sort of crept up to that and we got close to that, I mean, Nirvana was 50.
It was slowly just chipping away at that, chipping away at the suppliers, seeing what product they could give. And we weren't a lot of stores back then, the buying power wasn't as strong. So actually achieving each percentage point increase in GP was a real achievement.
If you didn't have, you know, Adidas and Puma in the early days, and then soon after a Reebok and Nike, that's what gave us credibility.
He really learnt and learned hard, and sort of understood that very quickly he needed to create a point of difference for the Athlete's Foot or this retail brand, rather than just being another shop that was selling product.
Customers came in and they seemed to have an expectation that we were the experts in footwear, and we weren't. So we had a connection over in the US, a guy called Tom Brunick, who ran the Athlete's Foot Wear Test Centre in Chicago. And I said, what we need to come up with a plan so that our staff can be more informative. He said, leave it with me. A week later, he rang back and he said, I've got it. He said, you know, McDonald's have got Hamburger University. He said, we're going to have Fit University. I said, well, let us be first. So he came out a month or two later and we all graduated as fit technicians.
In early 90s, about 20 franchisees at that time went to Lake Tahoe for the international conference. And it was also the birth, if I recall correctly, of what we call greet and seat.
It was the selling system for the athlete's foot.
And one of the standard things was measure both feet with people standing up.
2000, that sort of sticks in the head because once the Olympics were over, we got fit print.
And that became our symbol and what people got to know us for.
He's got high arches. He needs enhanced cushioning.
It was a fantastic tool for word of mouth. They just wanted to come in and stand on it and walk over it and look at it, and it really hit the mark.
Fitprint, I guess, has probably given credibility to the business.
They stopped sort of coming in and asking for a pair of Nikes. They came in asking to be fitted out with a pair of shoes that was good for them.
I can almost feel a distinct change when we became a brand ourselves. That's probably the biggest highlight and most exciting part.
Everybody gotta run sometime now.
The brand actually has an identity and stands for something and actually means things to a consumer in terms of what it delivers for them. We have built this business on relationships. So we're not interested in doing transactions. We actually believe we have relationships with our customers, and it all sort of starts there for us.
Well, I think from day one it has always been our service, basically, and our caring approach. You know, the end result is that we want that customer to walk out and know that next time they want to buy a pair of shoes, that they will never come anywhere else but the Athlete's Foot.
Thank you very much. See ya.
The TAF difference is really service, consistency, range and innovation.
When you're competing against price operators, you have to have a level of service and a point of difference that differentiates you so much that motivates people to come into your store.
And it is now a Bigfoot store, yeah, one of the biggest. A whole new product range, a whole new clientele really to walk in that front door, which in this current climate we need to open up, we need to broaden.
Mine's a Bigfoot, mine was number 36, I think. So, yeah, so I guess probably we're getting to the stage of, you know, almost a third of the group now Bigfoot stores.
Bigfoot really came about for us to look for a growth opportunity for the brand, given that we had this bleed of these new products coming into our stores, that we're being successful and being sold. And so we were overdue for a fit out, take slightly more space, build a store that was appropriate for the consumer set that we were focusing to, a slightly older, more female skewed, and create a destination that was much more than just athletic footwear. We were conscious of ensuring that we didn't give up any high ground on the athletic space, that it wasn't compromised, and that will become a growth engine for us as we move into the future. For the first time in a long time, facing a structural shift in the way that people behave. The technology has allowed them to do more in different ways. Our approach is this brand proposition of fit and these core values that we stayed true to all this time. We as a management team are confident that we can utilise that technology and utilise the internet rather than seeing it as a threat that's going to undermine our business.
Well, not for a minute do I think that I've done this by myself. You know, it's something that's happened from a lot of input from a lot of people and a lot of cooperation, a lot of mateship. We've created a business which has created a livelihood for many first generations of athlete's foot owners and also second generations.
Knowing that you know, what we started all those years ago is now giving some benefit to my own daughter and son-in-law and therefore their 3 children. It'd be quite something if I saw one of my grandchildren in the store.
I mean, there's a Cooper on every corner almost in this business, and I think that does sort of show tremendous faith.
It stays with me and it stayed with my family. I mean, we were all, you know, worked in the store at some stage or other, even the kids.
It's something that I've loved doing for the last 20-odd years. I mean, I think it's great that someone can go to work and actually enjoy what they do.
Seeing the people who have bought the stores from you still there and doing well, I think fantastic. I've been part of that.
We need to sort of reflect on the past, understand the past and what made us successful, but sort of acknowledge what we've got sort of that we're dealing with today, and do that with our franchisees to make sure that there's agreement, because once we get to the other side, we need to be that united sort of group and engine that drives together in one direction.